Greetings all, and welcome to Lucas Sprues. In today's video, we're going to have a inbox review of the Airfix 1/72 scale Lockheed Hudson, and this is, I believe, the 1975 release of this kit, which I picked up secondhand from the Queensland Air Museum, where I do a little bit of volunteer work. Occasionally they sell secondhand kits such as this one as part of some of the extra stuff we get given.
I'd expect this aircraft to be dropping bombs or fire everywhere if it was a true classic Airfix box art, but oh well, it still looks kind of pretty seeing the Hudson flying over the water there and the U-boat surfacing. So starting out with the classic box art, I don't know if this is a Roy Cross one, it doesn't have his signature on it, but you can see the Hudson on the front there flying in Royal Air Force colours, and it looks like it's just passed over the top of a U-boat. I suspect it's from the period of time when Airfix were sensitising their boxes, because there's not really any explosions going on. On the side here, a little bit of details about the kit, but nothing too much. Repeat of the box art with just the aircraft, which I think looks really cool on the side there. And on the top here we have a little bit of details of the markings included, which are for an aircraft of 206 Squadron from the Coastal Command. They operated quite a fair few of the Hudsons, being a little bit of a mid-tier kind of bomber. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't exactly as good as planes such as the B-25 or the B-26, so it was kind of used in more secondary roles. At least with the Royal Air Force. With the Royal Australian Air Force, they were used very heavily as a frontline aircraft, pretty much until we basically wore them out and then replaced them with Bristol Beaufighters, and I believe also the Beaufort, which we built domestically. So yeah, pretty important aircraft for us. As for the Americans, I believe it did see some action, but not as much as something like the Ventura or the Lexington. But yeah, quite a iconic little aircraft. I think it looks quite cool with all the windows still in, so you can tell it's definitely come from a passenger aircraft lineage. But anyways, enough about the box art and the look of the kit on the front there. On the back here, nothing really other than a sticker, which is made in France, apparently. So interesting. I don't know if this Airfix kit was made in France or if it was just the box. But anyways, we'll open things up, which they sound like they're a little bit loose. So I believe this kit was pretty much unsealed given the plastic wrapping on it, but it looks like back in the day you would not have gotten plastic to protect your Airfix parts. And it looks like we've already got a few bits and pieces that are broken. So I'll sort of sort this out and then we'll have a closer look at all of the sprues and bits. So we'll start off with these wing halves that I've got right here in my hands, and as you can see, they're pretty indicative of the age of this kit. You have raised rivet lines and raised panels and raised recess details, and nothing is sunken in. So yeah, very, very old. You can see all of the rivets and all of the access hatches there, and there's sort of those little slots there. They're all just a very basic kind of raised blob. Although interestingly, there is a little bit of recessing around the edges of these panels, and yeah, no, that's a raised one as well. So yeah, fairly basic detailing, and I'm not a huge fan of raised details, but I think it doesn't look too bad on an aircraft such as this, where there wouldn't have been an awful lot of streamlining in some places. Although I am kind of tempted to recess the details and keep the raised rivets, do a little bit of a mix of things. Upper surface is pretty similar. You can see on this particular kit or piece though, there is actually a fair bit of plastic that's sort of fraying outwards, which will require a fair bit of sanding and cleanup, but nothing too major to deal with. Probably just a little bit of a lower quality of moulding. You can see here Airfix Products 1963, so I'm assuming that's when this tooling was initially created. So I'm guessing at this stage it must have been a little bit older. There's also these weird marks kind of coming out of the plastic there, sort of spreading out like almost flakes or like an explosion or something coming out there. So it might have been a little bit of an issue with the tooling. Doesn't look like it's going to be a major issue in terms of the surface. It just looks like yeah, I don't know if it's just a little bit of the plastic not quite mixing, but the surface still seems pretty smooth, so I don't think that's going to be a major issue or anything like that. Being an older Airfix kit, they have a fair few little bits of play value or features molded into the parts, so things like the hole there for the ailerons to sit in. If you don't glue them together, you'll be able to basically grab your aileron, stick it into those holes there. Might need a bit of cleanup for the flash to work properly, and then you can basically yeah, move your ailerons if you wanted to. Pretty cool for things like stop motions and that kind of thing, but for the average modeler it probably doesn't matter too much. I'm sure it was very exciting for kids back in the days if you were building this kit to have all those little bits still move on it. So that's the wings. Fuselage is pretty much the exact same story. They've also come off of their sprue, And as you can see, nothing really on the interior other than a few raised lines there to help line up a few pieces, which we'll have a look at in a second. Interestingly, they've got the parts molded, or the part numbers molded to the sides of the fuselage there to make it a little bit easier if it comes off the sprue, which, yeah, is kind of useful. And they basically, yeah, just join the two fuselage halves like most other kits. And as you can see, outside is all raised rivet lines and decals. I kind of like the silver plastic that they've done this in. I'm almost tempted to use it as the like a metal chipping and see if I can use some some sort of liquid mask so I can use the actual bare plastic as the chipped metal effect, but that might be a little bit nuts. They have done a few little details, like they've recessed in the holes there where the machine guns would have been, sticking out there. And all of the windows and stuff seem to be relatively cleanly moulded. There's a few little bits and pieces that need neatening up, but for the most part, looks pretty good. They've done recessed, I think, panel lines oddly for the bomb bay, but nothing else. Oh no, the door here I believe is also recessed. They've actually done a bit of a raised detail for the hinges, which look pretty cool. So yeah, they've done a few little bits of detail that are a bit better than the rest of the kit. But honestly, for a 1963 moulding, that doesn't look too bad to me. We've got a few sprues here with what remains of the parts on them. This looks like a little bit of perhaps the rudder with some recessed panel lining there for the control surfaces, but otherwise it's all raised rivets and raised panel lines with a bit of flashing on them. Looks like one of the air intakes there. Looks that's our table there for the navigator, which sort of slots into the front nose there, I believe. And there's a little bit of raised detail. I can't tell if that's a ejector pin marking or if they've actually tried to do like a compass or anything like that. But I'll probably be replacing that, but I'll talk a bit about that later. Looks like a bulkhead here, possibly for the pilot that goes somewhere in there. I'd say probably just there, like so. But otherwise, most of the bits have fallen off of this sprue. Another sprue here. The only two bits we've got left are the, again, bit of the tail with recessed details for the control hinges and that, but otherwise raised rivets and panel lines. And what remains of this rather large propeller, as you can see on both of my props, actually, one of the blades has fallen off. Fortunately, I still have both of the prop blades, so I can repair that and simply glue those together, and that should be okay. On this sprue with the other propeller, the only other part is a very basic molded wheel without too much detail. And the last sprue that we've got here with the sort of silvery plastic contains the main part of the horizontal stabilizer there. Again, they've left out the elevators, which can be a separate piece that if you don't glue to these when you join the halves together, you can have them move. A few smaller bits here and there. We've got, looks like, some parts of the radiator there, pretty basic, but not too much flashing on them, so they shouldn't be too hard to fit. Little tiny barrels here for the machine guns, so I suspect you can put those into there, which, yeah, they're a little bit out of scale, but otherwise not too bad. Definitely for the day and age, it's pretty decent. Various little antennas and radars that get fitted to the aircraft. Looks like we've got, perhaps these are the wheel hubs, because there's a bit of raised riveting detail on them. So I'd say you basically insert those like so into the wheels. And then these might be pins for the propellers so that you don't glue them in place. Instead, you can insert those onto the props and use that as a wash so that the propellers will still spin. Another little radio antenna. Unfortunately, there's a fair bit of ejector pin marking in bad spots on these little parts. So that will need a little bit of filler, otherwise it's going to look a little bit odd for these two. Here we've got the tail wheel. Again, there's a bit of an ejector mark on it by the looks of things, but otherwise, yeah, they've done a bit of basic detailing on it, so not too bad. The last sprue that we have here is the clear parts, and as you can see, one of my windows has fallen off, but I reckon I'll just use some crystal clear to do these smaller windows since they're nice and easy and square. But we've got some rather large clear parts, being a bomber. We've got the main canopy here, which there's a bit of distortion, and unfortunately there looks like a fair bit of scratching and imperfections in the plastic with some of these parts. But it's not terrible. I've definitely seen worse for kits this old. And they have done a very, very vague and faint, looks like barely even, is it raised? I think they've done very basic raised frames for the frame parts there, but they're very, very light, so it'll be very hard to mask that up and paint it. Same thing with the main turret here. You can see there's a lot of scratching and imperfections in the plastic, and being a very curved shape, it's also very distorted. So it might be worth replacing those with vacuform if you can. I'll probably try and do my own. You've got a large sort of rounded piece here for the very front of the bomb aimer's position. And as you can see, it's very thick and it's very distorted, so not very good. And then there's another sort of window for the rear here, which I believe, oh no, it's for the, where does that one go? Ah, it's the bomb aimer's panel, so that would go right there. So for a curved part, it's not too badly distorted, but still, vacuform would definitely be a lot better if you can get some. Yeah, definitely for that Astrodome, which is pretty poorly molded there. And these are all the bits that fell off of their sprues, and you can see there's quite a lot of them. So we have here the looks like the engine nacelles. I think these are different halves. Yeah, there should be about 4 of these. Yeah, there we go. So I've got a few different engine nacelle parts. As you can see, they've done a little bit of recessed detailing here for one panel line, but the rest is all raised, including the singular large exhaust coming out there, and all of the little rivets and other details. Looks like there is a little bit of a circular kind of, I don't know what to call that, like a sort of lump with a bit of a circle in the middle of it. And I believe that is so that you can get your landing gear and put that into position, and you should be able to extend it and retract it if you don't glue it, which is a pretty neat little play feature. Although obviously with actually I think this aircraft doesn't actually have any landing gear flaps, so that would actually be quite accurate for the landing gear to retract without anything then covering it over. So yeah, interesting little play feature. I may build it with that just in case for stop motions. It might be a bit easier to retract the landing gear rather than having to Photoshop edit it. The struts themselves are pretty basic. There's not really too much detail on them. There's just a fair few little sort of attachments and that sort of thing. But yeah, so pretty basic. Engine detail. So I believe the Hudson had a fair few engines, and these would probably be the most common for the British ones. A little hard to tell what they're going for because they're quite basic and generic, but they actually have done a decent bit of detailing on these engines here with looks like recessed panel lines for the cylinder heads and raised details for other areas. There's a few little rivet marks on the center of the sort of gearbox part there. So yeah, both of them looking all right. As you can see, there's a massive seam line, however, on the outside of them, and looks like a little bit of an issue with the plastic again mixing, but that hasn't resulted in any funny textures. Just a lot of flashing and that nasty seam line that needs a bit of sanding, and those engines, yeah, wouldn't look too bad at all, I reckon, with a good painting. We've got some crew figures who are, I don't know, I've got mixed feelings about these old Airfix kits with the crew figures. On one hand, I think it's pretty awesome that they've included them, and it's cool to have a lot of people inside of your aircraft to make it look like it's being operated. But these are quite basic and old figures, although they are quite detailed for their age. They're just a little bit misshaped and maybe a tiny bit out of scale. But for the most part, they actually look, yeah, not too bad. You can see they've got life jackets on and a little scarf, and yeah, it looks like one of them's got a moustache, and you can see all the little details on his helmet there. So yeah, they look quite cool. So you've got 2 identical pilot figures, and then you've got this gunner who's, unfortunately, it's a little bit more basic for him, but you can see he's got an oxygen mask on. And yeah, you can see they've sort of done it so part of the machine guns, or the thing that holds the machine guns, is molded to his hands, which doesn't look super good, but it's a way of engineering this kit. So you then stick the machine guns here. The machine guns, by the way, very, very basic, and with that large pin piece so that they can elevate and depress, they are very, very well detailed, and they look a little bit out of scale and wonky. But you could always replace these with resin ones. I might do that with the 3D printer, perhaps. But yeah, cool that they've got pilot figures, even if they are a little bit weird looking. We've got a few more bits and bobs. I suspect these are part of the turret assembly. These look like they probably go together, and then you fit them in the back here. And I think, yeah, this is like a floor that the turret can then attach to, as you'll see in the instructions in a second. So yeah, pretty basic parts. They're kind of there more for functionality rather than to look realistic. Obviously, this doesn't really look like the turret basket of a World War II turret. You wouldn't have this kind of solid wall of metal or plastic or whatever there. Instead, it would be hollow, and you'd have the ammunition drums. But it's a way of doing it so that this model works physically, and so that you can have the guns rotate and all of that. So a little bit more of a play value feature than details, but oh well, it's of its time. Here's the other landing gear strut, the rest of the elevator, or horizontal stabilizer assembly, I should say, which looks like the underside pieces. Here we've got control surfaces. I believe on this aircraft most of them would have been fabric, but I could be wrong. For whatever reason, these are done as metal, so as you can see, all of these control surfaces have rivet details and a little bit of recessed details for the trim tabs on them. Otherwise, they're all raised rivet lines with some very nasty ejector pin marks on them, which will have to get cleaned up, and unfortunately in some spots that's kind of destroyed the surface detail with the rivets, but oh well. I suppose if you put them on the underside of the aircraft, they'll be a little bit more hidden, or you could just sand off all the rivets and redo them, perhaps. But yeah, that's all your individual control surfaces for the elevators and the ailerons. I believe the tail fins are fixed into one place, so you can't move the rudders, as you can see with this other half. Looks like another piece of the tail fin, another wheel, very basic there. Few more air intakes. These look like, this looks like the seat perhaps, or the floor assembly for the interior of the cockpit. Might have to have a look at the instructions to know where everything goes, but I suspect it's probably something like that's the cockpit floor, and then the walkway to the nose section of the aircraft is just in there, like so. So yeah, that looks reasonably accurate for a Hudson, although it's very, very basically detailed. There's no raised ribbing or any panel lines or details or any equipment, so very, very basic. And then we've got two more seats. They're very basic as well. There's not really any detail on them. They're sort of more just for something to put the pilot on, so that or the figures on, so that the missing details can be hidden by their presence, basically. Honestly, for the time, I'm sure this was absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of cool details in this kit, and all of those hidden little play features are pretty cool. I'm imagining this would have been awesome as a kid, and I'm excited to do this one as well. So we'll have a little look at the decals before we have a look at the instructions. As you can see though, there's not really too much to look at. They've done the basic RAF markings, and that's pretty much it. There's no extra detail. I probably won't try using these decals because, as you can see, they have kind of yellowed, and God knows what they would be like if I tried to use them. Plus, I'm going to be doing this one in Royal Australian Air Force colours, so that'll be slightly different roundels and markings. So yeah, decals, very, very basic, not as good as modern Airfix cartograph ones, and God knows what these are like after a couple years of sitting in a box. Finally, we have the instructions, and we've also got a little piece of the time Airfix promotion. Not sure what year this would date to, but it's a very nice vintage little ad for the Airfix Modelers Club, which is pretty cool. And here we have the proper instructions, and in classic Airform style, they are fold out, which I'm not a big fan of. And on this side, you have a fairly lengthy bit of detail talking about the history of the aircraft, which I think is really cool. Talking a bit about how it started life out as the Lockheed Type 14 Super Electra as a civilian aircraft, and then talking about how it eventually became the Hudson. And yeah, it talks a little bit about its history and its use with the United States Army Air Force and the US Navy, which is all pretty interesting. I don't think it mentions the Royal Australian Air Force, which is a bit of a shame because it was a pretty important aircraft for us, definitely in the dark days where we were afraid of being invaded by Japan. But yeah, very nice and classic Airfix detail. I really love that they do that. On the back side of the instructions here, you also have the marking guide, which is very, very basic. They've sort of done black and white codes to figure out which colour's which. It's not super easy to see. I think they probably could have made it a little bit more obvious, but oh well. It's not too bad for very old black and white instructions. And here we've got a little bit of a key, so we can see that a circle without being filled in is cement. That's a transparent part. The square that's black is do not cement, and then the clear square here is alternate parts, so basically optional ones. Turning the instructions over, you can see we've got not too many steps really for a medium bomber. You've got step 1, which consists of basically joining all the bulkheads that make up the flight deck, putting the seat in, the very, very basic control stick, which I thought was an antenna, and the pilot figure himself. Then you've got the turret, which needs a little bit of assembly. You've sort of got a washer that holds the base of the turret to this bulkhead. Then you've got the gunner and the 2 machine guns that he holds in place. So if you're very careful with this and don't glue it, you'll be able to rotate the gun turret plus elevate and depress the guns. Then you install the cockpit and the turret assemblies to their respective areas. For the bombardier/navigator's position, you've got a little desk with some equipment, and you've got a seat, and that second pilot figure is the bombardier who gets glued in there. Then you've got all these little windows. Once again, I'll probably be replacing them with crystal clear rather than actually trying to use the transparencies. Interestingly, it seems to suggest we have a decal for the instrument panel, but I have not actually seen one. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's one attached to this, so not too sure how you're supposed to get that look. Perhaps there's a little cutout somewhere for it, but otherwise, yeah, that seems a little bit odd. There's definitely no decal for those. Then we've got the engine nacelle assembly. So again, if you don't glue the landing gear struts to these circular holes there, I believe you will be able to extend and retract the landing gear. The wheels itself have a little hub holding them in place, so I suppose the tyre can also spin as well if you don't glue those together. And then you've got a little fairing that goes onto the strut, and you repeat that assembly on the opposite side. Next, you attach the wings, so you have to join the two halves together, and you've got the aileron that you can slot in between them. And again, if you don't glue them, you'll be able to move the ailerons. Then you join the wings to the fuselage, and you can put those engine cowlings or nacelles onto the underside of the wings there. Here we've got the engine assembly, so the propellers get inserted in there, and there's a little washer to hold them in place. Then you've got around about, looks like two little air intakes for radiators and cooling and that sort of thing that you then attach to the engine nacelle or the cowling there. On the outside, you've got a few more extra little details like the bombardier's window and the dome at the front there, plus a little antenna with, I believe, the pitot tubes sticking on it that you put on the front of the aircraft there. And the last two steps consist of the tail assembly. So you've got for each side two halves for the tail, plus you've got the horizontal stabilizer with one large piece for the upper surface and a set of two smaller ones for the underside. Optional elevators that can be put into place, and if you don't glue those as well, you'll be able to move them around. So yeah, more play features fitted onto this aircraft. And then you can basically attach the upper surface of the elevators, or horizontal stabilizers I should say, to the fuselage there. And finally, we've got the last few details, such as the astrodome and the cockpit windows, which get put into place there, plus two little antennas and radios and that sort of thing. An extra little window in the front there for the bombardier / navigator compartment, and the two little machine guns get put into those little recesses there. So yeah, not a too difficult assembly, although it is a little bit complex, I suppose, with all of those little moving control surfaces and the wheels and all of that. But otherwise, yeah, not too much detail or anything like that. Pretty basic, but a lot of play features, so definitely Airfix 1960s. So as to be expected, this is a pretty old kit with not an awful lot of detail, especially on the interior, and a lot of the surface detail is relatively basic and it's all raised. So I'll be definitely building this one as part of my Milne Bay film project, so it'll be done in a number 6 Squadron Royal Australian Air Force scheme. And I've actually already done an Airfix Hudson, or at least I finished one up that was partially built. And just like with that Airfix Hudson, I will also be upgrading this one with a few little features, including a 3D printed set of parts for the interior that I've designed and printed out. And I'll have a little bit of a closer look at that. I may also consider recessing all of the panel lines, but that's, yeah, a little bit uncertain about that. I believe with the other one I just left them all raised, which I don't think looks too bad with this kit, given that it's a bit older. And as for the clear parts, I reckon I will do my best to try and either buy a vacuform set or perhaps try and use these as a master mold and make my own set of vacuform parts. And then for the smaller windows, just use a little bit of crystal clear. So these are my 3D printed parts for the interior of the Hudson, which is something I've designed and 3D printed myself. So I've got a few little bits here and there to improve the interior. We've got the front flight deck section with the cockpit area with a little hole there to install the control yoke in, with the set of steps going down to the bombardier / navigator compartment, and then the bulkheads leading to the radio operator's room, and a little bit of raised detail for his equipment on the walls there, plus the little bit of the table there. And I did try and do a wireless tapping thing there, but it didn't really form because it's just so tiny, but that's alright. Then we've got a rear section of floor here with the wing spars on it, and as you can see, there's a little bit of raised and recessed detailing here and there. Plus we've got the little chute out the back here for the flares and that sort of thing. Here we've got a fair few seats, so the main pilot seat is this kind of design, is the one I went with, plus the second seat here for the pilot with sort of a fabric recessed texture there. Little seat for the forward part here of the Bombardier's section, plus the main seat here, which is this sort of larger one here. There is a bit of a framework on it, but I think it is quite fragile, so I may replace it with some metal wiring. Here we've got the sort of large bed that's present in a lot of Hudsons that sort of slots on the back wall here, just along the wing spar area, plus a third seat for the radio operator. Here we've got the little air access area for the Astrodome, so a little part that they could fold up and down to open it up. Various instruments and other details there, which are all very finely done with some raised switches and details and that sort of thing. Plus a few parachutes, the oxygen system, and some spare holders for them, and some little spare flare shots for the rear compartment of the aircraft. Also done the front bombardier / navigator's table with some of the little compasses and bits of equipment for him. Plus we've got the main instrument panel here with some raised details and all of the little throttle controls and switches, plus all of the instruments, which I've done as raised detail, which I can just basically dry brush. Also done the little pilot's compass there and rudder pedals, plus a little bomb switch for the bombardier. And here's the control panel for the pilot, plus the extra chute that goes in the nose section for the flares, and yet another little bit of raised panel detail for the bombardier. So it's a little bit iffy. Some of the details may be a little bit basic, and some of them might be a little bit off, but because I've basically just done this based on reference photos, so it's probably different for each Hudson. But it's definitely a nice improvement over nothing. So I'll cover putting these together and cleaning them up in my build video when I eventually do this kit. There's a few other projects I have to finish off first, but eventually there will be a build video coming for this one, including with the resin parts.
So as I've kept saying throughout this video, this kit is definitely of its time with all of the play features and the raised details, and quite a lacking of any interior details whatsoever. But it's always possible, I think, with these older kits to upgrade them and have a lot of fun doing it, if that's what you enjoy doing. I've personally enjoyed putting together the little resin set, and I look forward to fitting it into this kit. I'll definitely be doing a build video on this one in the future, so stay tuned. It might be a little while before it is finally out, but eventually I'll get there, hopefully. I think there's only one other tooling of the Hudson that I've ever seen in 1/72nd scale, and I think it's originally from MPM, according to Scalemates. And it's been reissued by Italia and Revell. It looks like it's a better kit overall in terms of details, but possibly not compared to fit, because this is very basic and will go together as so, hopefully. But anyways, if you get one, definitely recommend. Otherwise, thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel to help things out. And a massive shout out to my wonderful patrons for helping me not only to fund this kit, but also the larger project that I hope it will be a part of soon, the film I'm doing on Milne Bay. There are a couple of Hudsons in that battle. I've already built one, as I've mentioned, and this will be my second one. Possibly I'll do a little bit of a better job with the experience I've had since I've done the last one. So my Patreon's a little bit basic at the moment. I sort of just offer ad-free videos that I do. But I do hope to improve it in the new year, so if you want to support my projects and help me fund more of these videos, then join my Patreon. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and as always, take care, and until the next video, model on.